at that point in the application stack where it's authenticated, you are in the need to know to see that data. And so from a innovation standpoint and disruption, there's lots of things happening right here. From big data, from analytics, from containers, right? We're changing the way all of this looks, but the stack will continue to look the same and will continue to fight the same battles. So all about vulnerability management, and I am happy to make this presentation available to you when we are finished. But when I talk to customers, I rarely talk about products, and I rarely mention product names. What I really want to know is what threats are you trying to mitigate, and at what part in your stack do you have the ability to apply those? And based on that, again, if you apply it here, you're willing to accept the risk here, or find another compensating control to fill in the gap. So, and this is, I believe, my last slide, but what does the future look like for you? Whether you're a partner, whether you're a customer, going to be a customer, whether you work for us, I think it's about ecosystem synergy. And although innovation will continue to make life easier, it will also continue to make us more vulnerable. Again, all the disruptive technologies like containers, right? No one got in a room and said, let's figure out the most secure way we can extract an operating system and libraries from an application running on top of it. It's not the way it occurs, right? It's always a retrofit of security. And so ensuring that with innovation, you are pushing your partners, your security partners, don't pull them along, push them along to ensure that they're in alignment with what you're trying to accomplish from a security posture standpoint. Cybersecurity expertise, I know that from a number standpoint, that the demand is high and the security professional numbers are low. And I believe that that will continue to be the case. I think that cybersecurity professionals, I think although a very, if not the hottest space in IT, the demand for that will continue to grow, and the expertise will continue to be much lower. And so that represents a significant issue for us. Another thing is around key management. It's a difficult thing to do, and I can only tell you with future products and products you're managing today, everything's got a key. It's a session key, it's an API key, it's a token, it's key. And so how effectively you are managing your key infrastructure today will either garner you great benefits in the future or continue to be something very disruptive until you get your arms around that. But I can tell you that there's only going to be more and more and more and more and more keys, because there's going to be more and more and more and more encryption and more difficult things that people are doing to disrupt their technology stack to make it more adoptable, but also ensure that it is protected. I talked a little bit about just working with your cybersecurity partners and ensuring that you're pushing them along. You know, find out what is their quantum strategy. Find out what are they doing around, you know, analytics and big data. You know, it's important that, again, you're pushing and not pulling. And also go above and beyond compliance. So when I was back in the field and working commercial and working federal, I did a proof of concept or an evaluation for a company. You've probably heard of them, called Equifax. And so in that evaluation, it was to secure data at rest. So we did, with our product line, a really effective demo to demonstrate data at rest with access control, protection of insider threat. Everybody loved it, but the finance department. So when it came down to budgeting, finance came back to IT and said, well, what about self-encrypting drives? Does that check the box? And I have the voicemail recorded on my email box of the call we got from our champion there. We thought was our champion, that says, hey, I can't believe it, I'm sorry, but you know, we're going to check boxes for data at rest with self-encrypting drives. Thank you very much. You're great. And maybe we'll have an opportunity to maybe spend a little bit more cash later. So you fast forward, and if you think about the price of how many stamps they purchased. They could have bought encryption for everybody, and including maybe some of their competitors. And so it's really, I think, much more than compliance. It's much more than ensuring that you're checking every box. You have the ability, there are technologies out there today that can put you in a higher security posture, that can make you proactive, they can help you migrate to cloud. But you really have to be willing to budget, put the resources into it, and sometimes pause some projects. There's always competing and conflicting priorities. Well, data is not your number one priority, and you're not spending all the resources there. I think that represents a challenge today and will only get worse in the future, because the adversaries, the only thing they're after is data. What they do with that, whether it's to tarnish brands or whether it's to wreak havoc on missions, we don't know. But I do know the most effective thing we can do is encryption. So I thank you, and my last comment based on what Richard spoke today. So we talked a little bit about election hacking and IoT devices. So there's a movie on Netflix called The Great Hack. I don't know if anyone has seen it, but it's an interesting perspective on how social media can seriously drive perception and how they profile people on who can be persuadable and who cannot be persuaded. Because if you can't be persuaded, I won't target you with the social media campaign based on everything you've liked. And so it's an interesting perspective based on what he presented earlier. So it's called The Great Hack. Again, from some of the comments that he was presenting earlier, I thought I would share that with you. So with that, I appreciate it. Thank you for letting me present last, and I hope the traffic is light on all of you.
Any questions before he leaves? We do, see?
With this being so hot, why do you say that the number of professionals is going to be the same or shrink?
So, yeah, good question. I just feel that the capabilities and the need for resources to do things with these newer technologies is going to far outpace just the amount of babies we've had in the last 20 years for that kind of millennial generation to step up and jump in and fill those shoes. And so I just feel that the requirement of open seats is just going to astronomically grow, and just the sheer fact of the number of people we have, I don't think there's going to continue to be enough to sustain. And then of course you get into the federal government versus commercial markets, and ensuring that you're paying market rate for these cybersecurity professionals, and ensuring that they don't come on board, steal your training, and then leave for another opportunity. So it's I think it's, again, kind of interpretation of numbers, and where I see the market going in terms of available jobs and available people with the skills and expertise to fulfill those. Thanks. Yeah.
Any others? Back there?
DoD Acquisition and Sustainment AT&L group is driving to protect the supply chains. Obviously, the CMMC, the Cyber Model Maturity Certification, protect obviously supply chains. Our stealth technology on the South was stolen. They were there for 2 years. How do you think that drives necessarily? You were talking about an outlook of cybersecurity. Now we're going to be, merging NIST, ISO, FIPS, FISMA, all those requirements into this new accreditation. How do you see the impact? Is that the right way to go, or are we still just lagging?
That's a really tough question. I think, I believe it's the right thing to do, which is have a gold standard of how you evaluate security posture, whether it's software or hardware. I think that from a bureaucracy standpoint and the measure twice, cut once approach, and this analysis paralysis and the speed at which we do things, I think makes it impractical. Because if we ever came up with that by the time we did, we would be so far down, it's too late. So we just continue to segment FIPS and all these other approaches, and you take a best of breed approach of best practices and NIST guidance on how you protect things, and I think that's the best we will do. Maybe perhaps in cloud, when things are much more packaged as platform as a service, you can perhaps do higher categorization of security.
Do Did you have a question there?
Yes, well, I was going to ask more along, I saw you some containers, you had microservices up there, and I know people pushing using CI/CD. Do you think with the speed of which, instead of, we used to deploy software mods, you know, months at an end, now with CI/CD and people writing microservices, they're like doing it every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So just trying to, how do you see that affecting the security, because you had to act as a second level. How do you see the impact, positive or negative, the trend that's going there?
So I think from a security aspect, again, I think oftentimes the review mirror is applied, and we built this application, and it's not they woke up that day and decided we should really encrypt it. They're going to be forced or mandated to do so based on the data that software database is ingesting. But there are ways to do it effectively today. And there are ways of looking at what a container looks like from, you know, essentially it's just a bunch of root processes, again, that are mounting storage and doing something. And they're able to multiply or they're able to diminish based on need. And so it's, in my opinion, it will help innovation and make applications better, faster, patching much easier. But from a security standpoint, I think it does represent a challenge because, again, a year or 2 years from now, when everyone has taken on the expertise of how to deploy containers, and they are Kubernetes experts, and by that time, they will be, again, in the rearview mirror to say, okay, now I need to go back and I'm being forced to encrypt all of this. So it's not really the chicken or the egg. It's more of, you know, how do you do things in parallel? And how do you invest in parallel innovation with security? And when those two meet, you're doing something very influential. You're doing something that is very compelling. But when they don't meet, when they're like this, again, that's where accidents happen. And I think from a punishment standpoint, you know, again, Capital One is looking at 109 million stamps. That is a lot. And if you look at that day that occurred, and maybe the week after and the week after, you know, it's all about who's responsible for that environment. And as a cloud provider will tell you, shared responsibility, I'll keep it up 24/7. But the security of that data is yours and yours only. So when you look at Capital One and those type of events, you see the stock price plunge. And, you know, it of course ends up eventually like Home Depot and Target higher than it was before they were compromised, like free advertising. But for Amazon and other cloud providers, I'm not picking on them, but their stock price continues to gain even though there is compromise after compromise. You see no permissions on buckets, and next thing you know, Google is indexing them, and they're pushing that data out as, you know, available content. So again, I think it's, you know, making sure that innovation and security are in alignment, but also ensuring that when they're, you know, what are the repercussions for not doing so? Because that is what drives behavior. And until you have that, you will always have a gap, in my opinion.
Okay, any others? Oh, in the back.
Do you find that customers do have, they do have cybersecurity solutions but are using them incorrectly and thus negating the security?
I wish that's a great question. And I wish that was the case. I wish that they were using them but incorrectly. To be honest, I see oftentimes a lot of security products that are purchased that just never get used, and so it's just waste. And so I'd rather them try to use it and do it incorrectly, but unfortunately I see a lot of waste or projects that all of a sudden were a priority, then there's a competing priority, and then pushed to the side. Or it gets handed off from, you know, hey, my project here is done, here's the username and password, good luck. And there's no knowledge transfer, and so there's a lot of ineffectiveness there. But you know, I wish that was the case. I think it's even worse, where you're out there pushing different cybersecurity solutions, and then when you don't see it consumed and then applied, you know, it's wasteful. Sure, it's a really great question.
Any others? Okay, well, great. Thanks, Brent. Appreciate it. Okay, raffle winners, right? Okay, so looks like AirPods. So it'd be Joe Van Cleef. Joe, are you here? Van Cleve, C-L-E-V-E. No? Oh, gotta be present. Okay, next card. John Salgado. Okay, Echo Spot, Vanessa Phillips. And the last one is a fire tablet, Jimmy Chen. There we go. Awesome. Okay, so we're going to finish up today with training, right? Which is HSE training. It's actually going to stay right here. So, and this would fulfill all the requirements for the full CP credits, right? Which I know we were handing those out. So, if you're interested in that, you can hang around and get your CP credits. And Jose Morales is going to be giving the training. If people aren't going to stick around, I'd like to take the time to thank everyone for attending today. We're very interested in your feedback as we progress, and over the next few years we keep holding the summit. We'll want to improve on it, obviously, so I think if you can contact Allison, who's standing right there, she'll hold her hand up, right? We're more than happy to get feedback from you guys on what went well, what didn't go well, any improvements, and such. I'd like to thank everyone again, so thank you. Jose?
Let everyone clear out a little bit.
So, my name is Jose Morales. This training session is going to be a high-speed encryptor, our solutions for data in motion. I know we're running behind on time. This is my only slide. I'm going to use shadow puppets to explain.